Dover at 4:30 AM on the 5th of July, and after a very rough sea crossing we eventually found ourselves in this sunlit lay-by just to the south of Rouen, where we'd recovered sufficiently to require breakfast. This year we are honoured with that well-known villa supporter, Paul and his wife Debbie, and meanwhile Pat's rustling up bacon, egg and toast and beans to keep us going as we head on for Chateau Dun. That's the chateau at Chateau Dun, which overlooks the site. It's a small site which these days is marked up into individual pitches, which has somewhat spoilt the site because before you could put the caravan close to the river. We were only staying for one night before heading on to Clermont-Ferrand in the morning. I won't be home, I was lost in France, in love. It's alright, she's drunk. I've drunk one bottle of champagne. We've now arrived at our Clermont-Ferrand. It's a lovely sunny day. We've entrusted the barbecue to Monsieur Paul.
20 to 10.
He's making, we won't say he's making a right cock up of it, but we haven't had our dinner yet and it's 20 to 10. He keeps telling us it's only 20 to 9 in England, but I don't know what that's got to do with it.
The German sausage.
It's the German sausages, it is.
I think the site is rather full, but we'll take more video of that tomorrow when the sun is shining.
Right.
It's more when
not going to rain anymore.
Not off the mattress.
Right, eat your heart out, we're not going to eat this. Yes, steak, sausage, pork, bacon, all medium raw because the barbecue cooker is useless. He's trying to economise on charcoal, doesn't want to damage the ozone layer. Right, well, we'll see you in the morning. Well, morning has brought us bright sunshine. This is the campsite at Seyrat, which is in the southeast suburbs of Clermont-Ferrand, surrounded by wood-covered hills. Being as it was July, the site was rather full, but the amenities were quite capable of coping, and we spent a pleasant 2 days here. Well, we've taken a ride out into the volcanic park to the southeast of Clermont-Ferrand. These are all old extinct volcanoes, all of which apparently originated from one huge volcano which split asunder many millions of years ago. Madame Patricia giving us all a wave. and all the photographers out in force. They've just discovered Pierreforth on the map, which is the town nearest to Monsieur de Chalier's cottage. It's some 120 miles further south from Clermont-Ferrand, straight down the N9. This is the Lac de Guéry, and the mountains in the background in the direction of Mount Dore include the Puy de Sancy, very tranquil and calm. Carry it. Die for it. Oh, just go quick. You're falling, it'll be a good picture. Come on, quick. Water?
That's probably the best ride.
Go and splash.
It's a bit muddy over that side.
Don't take any notice of your husband. He's bound to lead you astray.
Could do with moving that piece of wood out.
Go on, run for it. You shouldn't have had 6 croissants for your breakfast.
I had one. Very well.
Gold medal position. He's going for the long jump. He definitely had 6 croissants, so he's got no chance.
Pick off on that big lump of...
Yes. Look, look, look.
Very good. I think I did the worst.
Ooh. Is it? This is Monsieur de Chalier's cottage. We did manage to get the caravan into the garden. We arrived by about 1 o'clock on the Sunday morning. We didn't get the key for a while, but eventually we did get into the house via the front door. We didn't have to move in through the storage area and down through the roof space. Obviously, as the house hadn't been used for about 9 months, when we got inside we found a considerable amount of work to do. Our biggest problem was that we couldn't find all the equipment we wanted to do it. The tools for the vacuum cleaner seemed to be missing, but with a bit of improvisation we used things from the caravan and bit of elbow grease, and after about 3 or 4 hours fairly hard work in the temperatures we managed to make the place quite habitable and spick and span. And Pat managed to calm down.
Hot water.
Pier 4 lies some 40 kilometres south of St Fleur on the D990. You travel down through the town until the junction just prior to the river bridge, where you make a sharp left turn onto the D65 signposted to Chaudes Aiguës. After approximately 4 kilometres you come to the small village of Le Menial, where you take the left-hand four, signposted to Le Thiron, which is approximately 2 kilometres further on, and you can see a small cluster of cottages from the top of the hill. This is Le Thiron. We're now approaching the cluster of cottages, and Monsieur de Chalier's summer retreat is down this small road to the right, which we're just going to run down, past the farmhouse on the right. This is the rear of the cottage. When we pull forward into the back garden, we are confronted with this splendid stone-built 19th century cottage, basking in Cantal sunshine. The cottage was originally built in 1812. This is the door to the main living room, and double doors lead to the kitchen. Although it was very warm outside, the cottage was always cool in the evening, and we used to light a small fire just to brighten the place up, really. See there the stairs to the first floor bedroom. We've now moved into the kitchen, complete with cooker and dishwasher, fridge. All our junk out of the caravan. The cooker is half electric and half gas, and this is the view into the garden from the kitchen doorway. We'll now go up into the first floor bedroom. Stove to keep the place warm in winter, and 2 windows from which you could see the valley of the River Trier. Looking out of the bedroom windows, This is the doorway to the storage space above the kitchen, through which you have to travel in order to get to the bedroom up in the attic. Now going through the kitchen, past the dartboard and into the bathroom. Complete with shower unit on the bath and a picture on the wall. This is the other double bedroom downstairs adjacent to the kitchen. That's the small room as you head back towards the kitchen. And the cook's hard at work.
You see that cook?
I'm not sure what it is she's cooking. The number 2 cook is barbecuing pork, I think it is. This is our friend Henrietta, who adopted us during our stay. In the next field we had a small calf, and Mum, who used to come over if we called her.
Flies are a nuisance, aren't they?
Pestered by the flies. These are the 2 small apple trees which have got a few apples on them this year. Can't really spot them. And an old cart down at the bottom of the garden. With all our efforts, we thought that we'd take a little trip out in the evening down to the gorge of the River Trierne, and this is the Pont de Treboul, standing very tranquil and quiet in the evening sunlight. No one about. It's so remote that I suppose there's very few people come this way. She looks a bit calmer now, doesn't she? This is what all the photographers were photographing. We climbed up away from the valley, heading back for Pier Fort, and this was the view we had of the lake, formed by the barrage de Sarons, and that's the Pont de Treboul down below. This is Pierre Emmanuel, who came to see if we'd got a young family for him to play with. I think he was a bit disappointed when he saw Paul, who was busy eating his tea out in the garden. We didn't do these too often because we found that the flies were a bit too much of a nuisance. on the Monday morning we decided we'd have to replenish the larder, and we set off for Aurillac, which is probably the biggest town in the area. This is Vix-en-Seu, which is en route. The Seu Valley runs down to Aurillac. This is a picturesque little town. Had a splendid view from this hill that overlooked the town. We spent lunchtime there by the river, had a nice lunch. It was extremely hot, but very pleasant. All the cameramen are still out in force. This is Aurillac, a statue to the first French Pope. The town itself was somewhat industrial, but there were pretty places, mainly by the river. A lovely waterfall, overlooked by the church spire. Some splendid old houses overlooking the river. One or two of them were a bit dilapidated. It's Tuesday and we're driving down to the Barrage de Saronnes and onwards to Charles-Aigu. We're just outside the small village of Auvergne, looking down onto the lake formed by the barrage. Small peninsula at Loursac had a small caravan site and a small beach, very quiet in the bright morning sunshine. The water was fairly low and you could see the stumps of the old trees which were there presumably when the valley was originally flooded. This is the Barrage de Saronnes, as the notice said. Again, more or less deserted, no one around, bright sunshine, very warm, plenty of picnic areas. That's the hydroelectric power station. All these barrages in the Trierne Valley were erected in the 1930s. It's so quiet, there's very little use made of these lakes formed by the barrages. I presume it's due to the remoteness. There was not much water passing through the dam. It may have been because they were doing some work down in the gorge. I think I've upset my favourite photographer. The red kites were dancing in the sky, almost as though they were real kites on a string. To the small village we stopped at, see if we could get a baguette. It was 12:30. We thought that probably all the shops would be closed, which is usual in France, a 2-hour siesta, but we were rather lucky. We found one that was open. I think she's got some pain de raisins, our favourite. I'm not sure whether they're going to post the baguette or the postcards. Oh, I think they have found one that didn't have a stamp on, just in time. We've stopped for lunch amongst the wildflowers before we head on for Chaude's eggs. Well, we've arrived at Auvergne, which is a small town, mainly noted for its hot thermal spring. The water, which I can vouch for, is very hot. I put my finger in it, not realising that it was 82 degrees centigrade, not far off boiling. Some of the water is actually used for heating the houses, but I think most of it runs off into the river. Debbie's going to throw a coin in the fountain so she can return. We were glad to walk up these shaded back streets in order to get out of the sun, which was a bit overpowering, and to find yet another baquette. Is the Chateau d'Allouz, which stands on the side of the lake formed by the first dam in the Trienne Gorge, the barrage de Grand Val. I think she's telling us she's cold. It was a bit windy despite the sun. There's a small church adjacent to the chateau. I think it's because the chateau stands on a route which is like Pilgrim's Way, as is denoted by the white crosses. There's a few canoes out on the Grand Val lake, but really very little activity. As I say, it's presumably due to the remoteness of the area. This gives a better idea of the size of the dam. This is the first dam in the Auvergne Valley. The river moving on down further south, where it's dammed twice more in the next 40 or 50 miles. We know there's a small beach down there, that's where we're heading and hoping to have our lunch there. That's one of the pleasure boats which goes around the lake from the viaduct to Garabit, and as you can see we found our way down onto the beach. They insisted in parking in the sun instead of the shade, so out comes the sun cream, but even so it was a beautiful lunchtime spent in splendid surroundings. That's the viaduct to Garabit in the background. It was built by Eiffel. I don't know whether he built it before these towers or afterwards, but it's quite a construction. Carries the railway over the Auvergne, and there's the pleasure boat return to base. Now this is Henrietta, who after we'd fed her the first day with some stale bread, decided she'd come every evening for tea. She adopted us just like a dog, and when she'd finished eating, she used to sit down beside our chairs and have a rest with us. Ah, beautiful. No, not you, the weather. Well, today we're heading for the Plum de Cantal via Brison. This is the small village of Brison, sitting in between the mountains, nestling in the morning sun. Almost looked English-like with the roses climbing up the cottage. All the photographers are out again. I'm not sure whether they really know what they're doing, but they're trying hard. We shall know when we get the results. Lovely red rose. Church tower nesting against the hillside, and a stream babbling its way alongside the road. Well, this is our deliberate mistake for this holiday. I pulled over to let a tractor pass, and unfortunately got my front wheel stuck in a roadside ditch. We were very fortunate that the passing motorist, a very kind Frenchman, stopped and took the bother to pull us out after a while. Well, here we go, covered in grease, covered in tar. Unfortunately, didn't tie the knot good enough and the rope came undone. We were actually resting on the front subframe of the car. I was very fortunate not to have done more damage. The ditch was very steep-sided. You just couldn't see through the grass. But even so, it would have been big trouble if I'd have perhaps broken the oil filter bowl off. At least it happened in splendid scenery. I think what we need is a push from two likely young ladies, and we're out. We'd have to take a lot of things out of the boot in order to find the tow rope. So after a lot of thank yous and merci beaucoup, we decided that we'd better move on and let the other traffic through, and we're very thankful that it didn't turn into a bigger disaster. I suppose that we shall remember this incident long after the holiday's forgotten. Anyway, we're now heading off on up the pass from Brisons. We're going in search of a waterfall which is clearly shown on the map, and Paul was quite sure it was up this lane. Don't think we're having a lot of luck. We haven't found it yet. And just a little one. Now we're heading off across some farmer's field. I hope he hasn't got a shotgun. No, we didn't find it there either. Oh, let's give up. Then we were lucky because we came across this Boy Scout patrol, and the leader was extremely helpful and told us how to find the blue route which leads to the waterfall. That's not it. That's just a small one, but eventually we did find the blue route and headed off up it in search of the cascade. We saw lots of wildflowers and many butterflies. We even came across another old barn which the roof had fallen in. Maybe a good prospect for a renovation in the future. But we never ever did find the waterfall. We're told by Monsieur de Chalier that there is a fairly large waterfall, but the route was blocked off by the farmers' fences. Well, we've crossed the Plom de Cantal and came across this village nestling in the hillside, Auvergne. Very photogenic. Now we've moved on to Murat, which is a small town. That's the town hall and the central square, surrounded by cafes, many gift shops, very hot in the noonday sun. We soon moved the car to a shadier spot. Town was overlooked by a statue of the Virgin Mary, gazing down over the church. Well, we're driving back home now, and this is the Plom de Cantal. We decided that we weren't man enough to walk to the top. It was there's no shelter. It was very hot, and the notice said that it would take an hour and 30 minutes. We thought it would have taken longer than that, especially to us lot. So we settled for taking some video and some photographs, and live to fight another day. This is a small village on the way to the P. Marie. Unfortunately, I've spoilt the pictures by leaving the blue filter on. The church didn't look like that, but it still looks pretty splendid. We were followed by the red kite, gliding around in a cloudless sky. The village is just off the main road. There wasn't a soul in sight. I suppose they've got more sense than us not to walk round in the hot sun. There's a stream running down through the bottom of the valley. The tractor turning the hay in the field. All overlooked by splendid countryside. Now the pictures return to normal. The cameraman's woke up. These are the mountains which include the P. Marie. This was probably the grandest scenery that we saw. The views stretched as far north as Clermont-Ferrand and probably as far as the Mediterranean to the south. The video doesn't do it justice because the skyline tends to blur out. The whole scene was set off by a profusion of wildflowers and beautiful sunshine. Not too hot because we were higher up. The horses were looking down on the waterfall below. That was the P. Mary, which we just panned away from. These are yet more of the volcanoes which were supposed to have originated from one huge volcano in prehistoric times. As you can see, the P. Mary was 1,568 metres high, but we felt we just couldn't or could not resist trying to walk the last few hundred metres to the top. So we left Paul and Debbie to browse around the gift shops and the cafes, whilst the intrepid Patricia and her cameraman set off up the hill. There were some steps made out by these planks of wood set across the rocks, but as you got higher, so the rocks had been washed away, and really it was safer to walk along the side of them. They were positively dangerous. Yes, we did make it to the top, and there's the picture to prove it. And this is the view looking to the north and panning around towards the east. We're looking towards Mount Dore and Puy de Dôme, Clermont-Ferrand, moving around eastward. Now this is looking down to the south towards the Mediterranean and swinging around to look towards the east. We found going down more difficult than coming up. You tended to slip on the loose stones. What a sight. Do you think I look like a Frenchman? Oh, I need a beret. I think they'd better give me the camera back quick. Oh, we're nearly down. That's where we've been. Well, we've headed off in the direction of Aurillac, and we came across this picnic area alongside the river, which was absolutely splendid, with lovely shaded spot and a nice cool stream to paddle in. It's a bit rocky, but it was idyllic really. Well, it's Saturday morning and we've moved into St Fleur to have a look at the normal Saturday morning market, and to see if we could find out whether there was to be a firework display in the evening, as it was Bastille Day. Unfortunately, the display was on the Sunday. We were unable to watch it. Very colourful the market was, and a lot of people around hunting for bargains. That's the cathedral there. It's a fairly drab affair, but quite nice inside. That's the view from the back of the cathedral, looking down the hill onto the river. Quite a splendid view. We've now reversed the view and looking up at the cathedral from the riverside. Well, this is the Saturday evening. We never found a firework display, and this is our last evening in this splendid cottage. Having our final game of Scrabble. We feel that we should move on tomorrow in search of other things to see. Our intentions being that we will head for Vichy. We're going to leave the cottage in the good hands of Monsieur Mobile here, who has kept his eyes on us for the whole of the week that we've been here. Now the only problem is we've got to take the caravan back up the narrow entrance. There's considerable debate going on as to who's going to direct, who's going to video, who's going to guide. That's where we're going, and I'm going to drive. First we weren't too successful. We were unable to get grip on the rather loose surface with the heavy caravan. I've rolled back to try and get a run at it, but I'm afraid it didn't work, and eventually I had to get out and put some boulders under the front wheel, which would give us a bit more grip. Now I'm going to give my instructions. You watch that, and you watch that, and I'll watch this. The problem was really scraping the caravan on the tree branches rather than avoiding the walls. It was all so exciting that the cameraman fell off his perch, nearly dropped the camera. Eventually, with a bit of a shove from the rear, we made it. So that was it, the end of a splendid week in the Cantal area of the Auvergne. There was Pierre Emmanuel to wave us off, and we set off amongst the early morning sunshine, as I said, heading for Vichy. This is our new home, a site at St Yor, which is 8 kilometres south of Vichy. It was an excellent site, well managed, excellent amenities, lovely weather, nice and peaceful. This is the centre of Vichy, around the casino with its bandstand, expensive shops, more or less a mini Paris, many antique shops, perfumes, jewellery, all rather splendid, nice to look at even if you couldn't touch really. The casino was surrounded by beautiful gardens with avenues of trees, lots and lots of white wrought iron chairs for people to sit on, which was obviously brought into use when the bands were playing in the bandstand. The casino was surrounded by some beautiful flower beds, which really gave a splash of colour to the whole area. We're walking down to the riverside. It's the River Allier, and the city has dammed the river as it flows through so that it forms a substantial lake within the city boundary, the object being to provide the city with water sports facilities. Their intended aim is to make Vichy the European centre for all types of international sport. There were many restaurants alongside the city side of the lake with splendid flower beds. We've returned to the city in the evening, and this is the man-made canoe chute with all the rapids and white water associated with canoeing, which can be controlled in its intensity by the sluice gates at the top of the canal. All the flags of the European community flutter from the bridge in the evening breeze. There were even two herons moving around on the river below the dam. This is the dam which forms the lake. The water escaping to travel on further north to join the River Loire. The salmon shoot at the side of the lake. Short while listening to the band in the bandstand before deciding it was time to head once more back to camp. We've now travelled another 100 or so miles further north to Chartres. This is the site right in the city of Chartres, which we found more by luck than judgment. It was an excellent site in excellent surroundings, but unfortunately spoilt by the what we would describe as gypsies, who'd more or less taken over the site, making a mess of the amenities and generally making a nuisance of themselves, particularly at night. Fortunately, we were only staying one evening. As I say, we were 2 kilometres away from the city centre, and the walk into the centre, which is where we're going now, was something quite splendid. They're all staggering along because they've been drinking too much champagne.
Get up and walk. You're idle. You shouldn't drink so much champagne, yeah.
Do something tired.
This is one of the churches attached to the cathedral precincts, really. The cathedral itself stands on top of the hill, which we're struggling to get up. And then down this splendid narrow street we can see the rose window in the background. We'd come in mainly to hear the bell toll. It has a magnificent bell which booms away, but unfortunately the cathedral was closed and the bells weren't ringing because they'd got a symphony concert taking place inside, so we were a bit disappointed. Still, the view was splendid in the evening sunshine, and we slowly wandered around and headed back down towards the river. There's a nice restaurant here on the left, which looked very tempting. The menu was from about 170 francs. one day maybe we'll try it. We felt you got double value on this walk because of all the reflections in the water meant you could see everything twice. Well, we've now headed on to our final campsite, which is just outside Abbeville at a place called Pont Le Grand, and we've driven up on the first evening to watch the fishing boat setting out to sea from St Valery. There were a lot of people about waiting to buy their fish straight from the boats. The previous evening we'd seen this splendid beach which stretched for miles, and so we thought we'd better get up early the next morning just in case the place was crowded. As you can see, we had it to ourselves. There was a bit of a heat haze, but it was brilliant really, almost white sand. It was so hot that Paul ventured into the sea, and that we fooled around and lazed around and suffered by getting on the top of our feet sunburnt. Fortunately not too badly. This smoky old train which runs from St Valery just along the coast, it doesn't really go anywhere, it's just a little run-around engine. Well, that's it. The end of yet another 2 weeks of glorious French weather, a lovely holiday, no arguments, plenty of good food, and I've no doubt we shall return in the very near future and look forward to it.